The mahogany conference table felt cold under my palms. 2:47 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, and I was sitting across from the family that had spent 3 years destroying my life. My sister Penelope's diamond bracelet, the one Mom bought me for my college graduation, caught the light as she reached for her water glass. The worst part wasn't that they'd stolen my inheritance. It was that they were about to lose everything they'd schemed to take, and they had absolutely no idea what was coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this nightmare actually began. 3 years and 4 months ago, I stood in my childhood home, still numb from Mom's funeral. The house smelled like the lilies from the service, that overwhelming sweet scent that makes your head hurt after a while. The will reading is scheduled for Thursday, my older sister Penelope announced, already acting like she owned the place. She was wearing Mom's Cartier watch. Mom hadn't even been gone 48 hours. I should have known something was wrong when Dad, my stepfather technically, but the only father I'd ever known, couldn't look me in the eye. He kept adjusting his tie, that nervous habit he'd had for the 23 years he'd been married to my mother. Our younger sister Genevieve was quieter than usual, picking at her cuticles in the corner. But Penelope? She was already measuring the windows for new curtains. Mom had built her fortune from nothing, started with a single bakery in 1987 and turned it into a chain of 73 locations across the East Coast. $10 million in assets. She'd worked 16-hour days for 30 years to build that empire, and I was her business partner for the last 8 years of her life. While Penelope was getting her third divorce, and Genevieve was finding herself in Bali on Mom's credit card, I was in the test kitchens at 5 a.m., helping develop new products. I negotiated the lease for our flagship store. I created the entire social media strategy that doubled our revenue in 2 years. Mom always said, "Sweetheart, the business will be yours someday. You're the only one who truly loves it like I do." Thursday arrived. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and furniture polish. Mr. Fitzgerald had been Mom's attorney for 15 years, and he even looked uncomfortable as we settled into the leather chairs. "This is unusual," he said, opening the folder. His hands were shaking slightly. "Your mother revised her will 6 weeks before her passing." My stomach dropped. 6 weeks before she died, Mom had been in the hospital. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, barely conscious from the pain medication. "The estate, including all business assets, property, and financial accounts, is to be divided as follows." He cleared his throat. 60% to Penelope, 30% to Genevieve, 10% to Harrison, that's your father, and to you. The silence stretched out. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. "A single item, your grandmother's recipe book." The room tilted. Penelope was already smiling, not even trying to hide it. "There must be a mistake," I whispered. "I worked with Mom every single day. She promised—" "There's no mistake," Penelope cut me off. Mom was very clear in her final weeks about who actually cared about her versus who just cared about her money. That's when I knew. The way she said it, the rehearsed tone, this wasn't Mom's decision. I spent the next 72 hours in my apartment staring at that recipe book. It was the only thing I had left of my grandmother, who died when I was 7. The pages were stained and worn, held together with tape and hope. And then I found it. Tucked between the pages for chocolate chip cookies and lemon bars, there was a note in Mom's handwriting. But not the shaky, drugged handwriting from her final weeks. This was from years ago, clear and strong. "My darling girl, if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. The combination to my safety deposit box at First National is your birthday plus mine. Trust no one. I love you, Mom." My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the book. My birthday was March 15th. Mom's was September 2nd. The combination would be 0315-0902. I drove to First National at 8:03 the next morning, before I could lose my nerve. The bank manager, Mrs. Patterson, remembered me from when Mom used to bring me in as a child. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, guiding me to the vault. "Your mother was a remarkable woman." The safety deposit box was larger than I expected. Inside was a manila envelope, thick with documents. My real mother's will, dated 2 years before her death, notarized, witnessed by her accountant and her oldest friend from college. It left 70% of the estate to me, with equal smaller portions to Penelope and Genevieve. There was a letter attached. "My dearest daughter," it began. My eyes were already burning. "If you're reading this, it means someone has tried to cheat you out of your inheritance. I'm putting this here as insurance, because I know how your sisters can be when money is involved." There was more. So much more. Medical records showing Mom had been heavily sedated and legally incompetent during those final 6 weeks. Emails I'd never seen, where Penelope discussed handling the situation with someone named Wesley Crane, an estate attorney I'd never heard of. And bank statements. Transfers of $47,000 from Penelope's account to Wesley Crane, dated 3 months before Mom died. They'd paid someone to forge a new will. I sat in that vault for 27 minutes, reading every document 3 times. Mrs. Patterson finally knocked gently on the door. "Dear, are you all right?" I wasn't all right. I was furious. But I was also smart enough to know that charging in with accusations would get me nowhere. Penelope had Dad wrapped around her finger, and Genevieve would side with whoever was winning. I needed a strategy. I needed proof they couldn't deny. And I needed time. "I'm fine," I lied, carefully placing everything back in the envelope. "Just processing some memories." I made copies of everything that afternoon, put the originals in a safety deposit box at a different bank, sent copies to a lawyer friend from college who practiced estate law in a different state. Then I did something that felt insane at the time, but turned out to be the smartest move I ever made. I let them think they'd won. I showed up to Sunday dinner at Dad's house, the house that used to be Mom's, that was now Penelope's, according to the fake will. I smiled. I complimented the new curtains Penelope had installed. I asked Genevieve about her new boyfriend. "I'm sorry I made such a scene at the will reading," I said, the lies tasting like acid. "I was just emotional. Of course, Mom knew what she was doing. I'm glad the business is in good hands." Penelope's eyes narrowed, but Dad looked so relieved he actually hugged me. "That's my girl. Family is what matters most." Over the next 6 months, I documented everything. I got a job as a consultant for a competing bakery chain, which drove Penelope crazy, but she couldn't stop me. I watched as she ran Mom's business into the ground with decisions that made no sense. She fired the production manager who'd been there for 19 years. She changed suppliers to her friend's company, which charged double for inferior ingredients. I watched the quarterly profits drop by 38%, then 51%. Meanwhile, I was building my case. My lawyer friend, Roxanne, connected me with a firm that specialized in estate fraud. We started investigating Wesley Crane. Turns out he'd been disbarred in 2 states for exactly this kind of thing. Penelope hadn't even been smart enough to hire a competent criminal. We found the notary who'd supposedly witnessed Mom's signature on the fake will. She worked at a UPS store and had no memory of the document. When we showed her the signature, she went pale. "That's not my signature," she said. "I mean, it looks like mine, but I never notarized anything for a hospital patient. I will remember that. Forgery, fraud, and because Mom's estate was over 10 million, it qualified as a felony in our state. But I didn't go to the police. Not yet, because I'd found something even better. Mom's business was structured as an LLC with specific succession clauses. If the majority owner was found to have obtained their shares through fraud, the shares would revert to the next eligible heir named in the last legitimate will, which was me. All I had to do was prove the fraud in civil court, and I had everything I needed. The deposition was scheduled for January 12th. Penelope showed up in a designer suit, looking like she'd already won. Her lawyer, some guy in a cheap tie, not Wesley Crane, who'd mysteriously disappeared, kept trying to bluster his way through. My legal team presented everything methodically. The real will, the medical records showing Mom's incompetence, the forged notary signature, the payment from Penelope to Wesley Crane. I watched Penelope's face go from confident to confused to terrified in the span of 40 minutes. "This is ridiculous," she finally snapped. "Mom changed her will because she wanted to. She was angry that your mother was legally incompetent to change her will," my attorney cut her off. "We have 3 doctors willing to testify that she didn't have the mental capacity to sign her own name in those final weeks, let alone understand complex legal documents." "It's her word against mine," Penelope said, but her voice was shaking now. "Actually," my attorney smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile, "we have the testimony of 2 nurses who were present when Wesley Crane visited your mother's hospital room. They remember it clearly because he only stayed for 3 minutes and your mother was asleep the entire time. They thought it was odd that he claimed to have had a lengthy discussion with her about her wishes." The color drained from Penelope's face. "We also have Mr. Crane's bank records, which show he deposited your payment and then withdrew it in cash the same day. He's currently under investigation for fraud in 3 states. When the DA's office found out about this case, they became very interested in talking to you." That's when Penelope started crying. Real tears this time, not the fake ones she'd cried at Mom's funeral. "I didn't think anyone would find out," she whispered. "The business was failing anyway. I was just trying to save it." "By stealing it from your sister?" My attorney's voice was ice cold. The judge had heard enough. The fake will was declared invalid. Mom's real will was reinstated. And because Penelope had committed fraud to obtain the assets, she was ordered to return everything, with interest. But here's the beautiful part I hadn't planned on. Because Penelope had tanked the business so badly, and because she'd already spent so much of the money on her lifestyle, she couldn't pay it back. The court ordered her to liquidate her assets. The house, Mom's house, went up for sale. Penelope's car, her jewelry, everything. And still, it wasn't enough to cover what she owed. Genevieve tried to distance herself from the whole thing, claiming she didn't know about the fraud. But she'd spent her share too, on a condo in Miami and a boat she didn't know how to sail. That had to go too. Dad, who'd been complicit by looking the other way, lost the house and his comfortable retirement. He moved into a small apartment across town. I haven't spoken to him in 2 years. As for me, I took over Mom's business. It took me 18 months, but I rebuilt it. Brought back the old production manager with a raise, returned to our original suppliers, launched a new line Mom and I had been developing before she got sick. Last quarter, we exceeded our pre-fraud profits by 32%. I opened a new location last month. It was named Dorothy's. That was Mom's name. At the ribbon cutting, I put up a photo of her from 1987, standing in front of that first little bakery with flour on her cheek and hope in her eyes. Yesterday, Penelope called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. I'm living in a studio apartment, she said, her voice hollow, sharing it with a roommate. I work retail now. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I was greedy and stupid, and I destroyed our family. I could have gloated. I could have hung up. Instead, I surprised both of us. Mom used to say that the best revenge is success, I told her. I'm not going to lie and say everything's forgiven, but there's a job opening at our new location. Minimum wage, entry level. If you want it. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. Why would you do that? She finally whispered. Because Mom would want me to, I said. She built something from nothing. She believed in second chances. And despite everything, you're still my sister. I don't know if Penelope will take the job. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. But I made the offer, and that's enough for me. I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it because I refuse to let her bitterness and greed turn me into someone Mom wouldn't recognize. The business is mine. The house is mine. The future is mine. And that's the sweetest revenge of all. Not just winning, but building something even better than what they tried to steal. Mom would be proud.